Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. Today, I will talk about medical vision language models and agentic AI in resource-constrained and privacy-preserving settings. My name is Abdurrahim Yılmaz, and I'm working on AI tools for clinical decision support in medical domain, specifically for dermatology. Let me start with a background. I graduated from Mechatronics Engineering Department from Yıldız Technical University. I focused on computer vision, microrobotics, and medical AI projects. Then I joined Bundeswehr University Munich, which is a military university. There I focused on high-quality sperm selection for intrafertilization by using generative adversarial networks. Without staining, we called basically virtual staining. In parallel, I co-founded two startups, Corporal Health and Coach Motion. Then I started my PhD in 2023 at Imperial College London with President's Scholarship. And I'm working on AI tools for clinical decision support in dermatology.
Abdurrahim, do you prefer to ask the questions during the presentation or at the end of the presentation?
Yeah, actually, I prefer to ask this question during the presentation.
Okay, just I wondered. So, you're a research assistant at Germany, but so is it the case that your master program is a joint program with a university in Germany? Also, I didn't understand this. Could you please explain this a little bit?
Okay, no, it was completely different position. It was a part-time research assistant position, and it was a separate position from my master. I finished my master, then I started this position.
So it was not a second master, right?
No, I'm not second master.
Okay, just a research position. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay,
just
thank you.
research. I joined a research laboratory in the first month of my undergraduate studies, and during my bachelor years, I contributed to several research projects with Professor Hüseyin Üvet, and I include one project here that is especially important to me. We got a Best Paper Award for these conference proceedings, which was the first award of my career when I was still in the first year of my undergrad. We received this award at a conference that was held at Boğaziçi University almost 10 years ago. And this photo is from 2017 at the Turkish Robotics Conference with Professor Evren Samur. I guess he's from mechanical engineering. And I contributed many computer vision and control projects for microrobotics. And I worked on microrobotic wound scratching platform and microrobotic nanoparticle mixer in my master thesis. And in the last year of my master, I joined an optics project focused on measuring cancer cell stiffness using a digital holographic microscope. And in this project, we mostly worked with skin cancer cells. And this project completely changed my whole career. Actually, my transition from my master to my PhD happened through medical AI, and more specifically through dermatology because of this project. And I have chronic atopic dermatitis, also known as eczema. And you can see dark circles around my eyes. And around that time, my eczema was quite severe because of COVID pandemic. And in a meeting of this project, I met Professor Gülsüm, a professor of dermatology. And she invited me to work with her in Manisa on AI for dermatology. And I stayed in Manisa for 3 months, and I visited her clinics several times. And that experience became the starting point of my interest in medical AI. But why did I stay in Manisa for 3 months, and why did I visit her clinic several times? The reason is that I need to be at the hospital to process the data, as I couldn't move any data outside the hospital. And in Manisa, together with Professor Gülsüm, we developed a novel and unique data set for dermatological image analysis, and specifically for skin cancer detection. And this slide shows more detail about the data set. We developed this unique taxonometry to be able to develop advanced AI methods like hierarchical learning, because there was no any data set to develop such approach. And you can also reach this data set via Harvard Dataverse, GitHub, and other repositories. And I contributed our other medical AI, microrobotic, and optics projects during my bachelor and master years. And let's focus on our main topic, and medical vision language models and agentic AI in resource constraint and privacy preserving environments. And I would like to highlight an important gap. In academical paper, we mostly focus on data collection, model training, evaluation, or clinical trials. But for products, at product sites, there are different challenges like regulations, privacy, infrastructure, resource, and business scaling, especially for medical AI. And medical AI must solve all of these to create real impact, and we need to be aware of all these key points. And now I want to move to the broader motivation. Multimodal models can combine imaging, text, and other modalities for holistic analysis. And agentic AI can automate clinical workflows. And by this way, we may reduce diagnostic errors and accelerate treatment decisions and provide better care. But there are specific challenges for medicine. Patient data must remain within national borders, even within hospitals. And we need large infrastructure, and frontiers language models require expensive GPU infrastructure. But we can solve this problem by developing small and specialized language models that can run on standard computers, and agentic systems can orchestrate everything for us and to accelerate different cases. And we can, for this purpose, there are two main pathways for implementation. The first pathway is we can use our standard computer or workstation for each clinic, or governments can build centralized national infrastructure for us. And both pathways provide private, affordable, and physician accessible implementation, but the first path is better than the second path because using standard computer and small and specialized models could be better than centralized nation infrastructure, as it's not more scalable like using standard computer, because our centralized nation infrastructure won't be like OpenAI's infrastructure. And we developed a framework called ScaleMet. Yeah, we can use small and specialized language models. They are very effective, but we cannot train these small and specialized language models because we need huge data, and clinical data is scarce and private, and that limits LLM training. And we need high computational cost, but for training part, we need many staff and clinicians for data annotation. And there's no any scalable multimodal privacy safe pipeline, and we cannot upload our patient data to models like ChatGPT to create synthetic data. And we can use state-of-the-art language models to generate synthetic data. We can distill their knowledge, for example, transfer knowledge, and we can generate synthetic text, maybe synthetic image, and we can use PubMed Central as a ground truth source. We mostly cannot use medical textbooks as there are license issues and copyright issues. Yeah, commercial companies use their data, but there are lots of lawsuits because of this case. And our framework automates rich synthetic data and evaluation creation, and it enables local vision LLM fine-tuning. And it's modular, it provides multi-agent deployment on low-cost hardware. And this is our study overview. Actually, we chose the field of dermatology because it's the only clinical field that relies heavily on visual assessment. It's not like radiology or histopathology. We cannot collect million scale data for dermatology from centralized health resource like Ministry of Health, because most of the data are stored in specialized storage, and there's no enough data in centralized environments. And in our study, we used completely open source environments, and they are commercially available. Actually, there are million scale non-commercial data, but in this study and in this framework, we would like to develop commercially available medical AI. And we focused on PubMed Central, and we collected more than 4 million PubMed articles, and we applied a license filtering and keyword search to find dermatology papers with their caption and inline mentions. And you can access all this PubMed data by using their FTP server or API. And we also collected all open access repositories and commercial available data sets. And we collaborated with 3 clinicians, and they created limited data bank and seed tasks for instruction following based synthetic data generation. And at the end, we have a completely synthetic training data set. And by using this training data set, we fine-tuned commercially available and complete open source vision language model to create our dermatology-specific language model called Dermatolama. Actually, there is another copyright issues. We need to mention their llama keyword in our model name, and that's why its name is Dermatolama. And we developed a completely open source and local deployable data annotation tool. And there are 4 main outputs here. So we developed a framework, and there's a synthetic data set with 3 million samples, and there's a first fine-tuned vision language model for dermatology, and there's a open source data annotation tool. And let's focus on data collection part. We only used commercially available data, and we generated synthetic data by using Gemini 2.0 Flash model. And this is first specialized data set at that level, 3 million samples. And there's another important point. We have 1.7 million image text pairs here, and which is very important for us because we need paired data to fine-tune our vision language models. And this slide explains how synthetic data were generated from different sources. Open access dataset provide image metadata and templates, and while PubMed articles provide clinical context, image captions, and inline reference as a ground truth or gold standard data. And we also used self-instruct approach to generate structured tasks, questions, and answers. And it allowed us to create diverse training and evaluation material beyond simple image classification. And we mostly used self-instruction method to generate new and unique synthetic data. And here you can see some examples of seed tasks and anamnesis style questions. Anamnesis means medical history. And in this framework, we needed to create paired samples such as image text pairs, because in daily clinical practice, diagnosis is not a one-shot process. It usually happens through a conversation between the patient and the doctor. And the language model needs to learn not only how to analyze an image, but also how patients and doctors interact between each other. And for example, one seed task asks the model to define dermoscopy, and another task it to define topical retinoids. And these may look simple, but they are important because they define the structure of the synthetic generation process. A seed task tells the model what kind of instruction, what kind of input, and what kind of output we expect from a small number of carefully designed seed tasks by our clinicians. We can generate much larger set of examples. Actually, we just generated around 200 seed tasks, and we generated more than 1 million synthetic data. The goal is to teach the model not only to recognize image, but also to respond in a clinically meaningful language format. And we also created 3 evaluation sets, and evaluation is one of the most important part of the development of a language models. And the first evaluation set is based on dermoscopic image. Actually, in dermatology field, there are 2 imaging modalities. The first one is dermoscopical image, which is a type of microscopy to see deeper patterns of skin lesions and to detect skin cancer. And we generated a clinical image-based multiple choice question answering set based on test split of PubMed data we collected. And we have complete the synthetic LLM generated text only multiple choice question answer data. And we generated this eval tree for the purpose of to assess textual knowledge base. Actually, this design is intentional because if we evaluate only on text, we don't know whether the model can interpret medical images. And if you evaluate only on classification like CNN or object detection, we don't know whether the model can reason or generate useful explanations. And for the fine-tuning part, we use.
I have one question here.
Yep.
Are you generating the text only or the images too? Like in data set synthesis, are you generating both text as well as the images, right?
No, we just generated text, synthetic text data, not image data.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. For fine-tuning part, we used Llama 3.2 11 billion vision variant, and we used LoRa optimization method for fine-tuning. Actually, the most important part of our approach is here. The training was performed on a computer with 4 RTX 4090 GPUs and 512 gigabyte of RAM. But the resulting models can be used on a single RTX 4090 GPU. And this is central to the resource constraint argument. Actually, this is the most critical part because we aim to use our fine-tuned and specialized models in our standard computer. And actual training part was not, for training part, we didn't require large infrastructure and large cost. Actually, we tried to generate this synthetic data by using a cloud-based environments, for example, a model or run pods. Actually, its cost was around $500. That's why Chinese language model companies can distill US language models, and they develop better, almost better language models than US competitors. To understand how training data scale affect performance, we trained and evaluated 5 dermatoloma variants, and these range from 10K, 50K, 100K, and 200K, and full data that contains 3 million samples. We also compared the models against strong baselines. Actually, they were strong baselines when we started this project. We evaluated against Base Llama, Gemini 2.0 Flash, and GPT-4o. Actually, we facilitate this model auditing because we need to understand what happens when we add more data, when we add different type of data. And at final stage, here as you can see our results for dermoscopic image analysis. Our model is best in terms of classification and report generation, and our model surpasses state-of-the-art models in overall, but it's very close to state-of-the-art model in terms of classification. And our model can surpass state-of-the-art models for text-based question answering, but there's a small gap in classification accuracy. Actually, our model can explain everything better than frontier language models, but there is sometimes small gaps in accuracy because our model was trained based on synthetic data and conversation style and conversation style data set, and this provided better explanations and better report quality. And I put some example reports here. I would like to focus on melanoma part, which is the critical part of skin lesions. And on the left side, our clinicians prepare ground truth report and our model response and base model response. Actually, clinicians explain it and provide a diagnosis, and our model explain it and provide a diagnosis by mentioning melanoma, and also mentioning further evaluation is needed, which is important for medical AI. But base model just write random things, and there's no any correlation between ground truth or base model, and it cannot find the correct diagnosis as well. Another output is annotator method. We need a privacy preserving tool for local data annotation, and it's complete open source, free, and commercially usable. Actually, there is no enough local data annotation tool, and we also developed hierarchical data annotation feature in this data annotation tool because most of
Abdurrahim, is this a mobile app?
No, it can be used via web application or mobile browsers.
Okay.
It's not a mobile application. Mm, this data annotation tool provides a hierarchical data annotation approach, which is very important for us. And we use Flutter for front end. We use Firebase for backend. But we can share this application as a mobile application, Şuayb Hocam, but it's not released on Google Play or App Store. And all models, all data, and all codes are accessible via GitHub or Hugging Face. And before focusing on the agentic AI part, I would like to mention open source medical language models and foundation models, because they can be very useful for agentic AI systems, because we cannot train all agents or all language models, and we can use foundation models to fine tune or to deploy them. Because the main cost of developing a language model comes from pre-training or full fine-tuning, and big technology companies can afford, such as MedGemma, developed by Google. These models usually have strong general medical knowledge, but they are not always specialized enough for specific subfields like dermatology. And we used our synthetic data set DermaSynth, and we fine-tuned MedGemma 4 billion variant, which is very small size for us. But we increased its success by 10% with our synthetic data set. And there are also foundation models, but most medical vision foundation models, they are not really foundation models. Actually, they are excellent domain specialized backbones because they are trained on specific subfield. For example, they mostly focus on clinical image analysis for dermatology, but they can produce sometimes mediocre success for dermoscopic image analysis. Actually, we try to use them to measure their performance on our DERM 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 data set, and their accuracy was high for malignancy detection, and we can use this foundation model for malignancy as a malignancy agent, but there's no a good foundation model for subclass data classification, for subclass classification. And let's talk about a bit agentic AI. And this slide shows.
I have one question here. Can you please go back to the reinforcement learning slide where you were mentioning the reinforcement learning from human feedback?
Yeah.
Okay. I just have one question. Which algorithm did you use in reinforcement learning from human feedback?
Actually, we didn't use any RLHF method in this study. Our data annotation tool can be adaptable to different data annotation approaches, but we didn't use any RLHF in our case.
Okay, perfect. I thought you have used them. Thanks.
Actually, this slide shows why agentic AI can be useful in medical decision making. Actually, instead of relying on a single model, agentic AI allows multiple specialized agents to work together, like this one. And this is closer to real clinical practice, where difficult cases are often discussed by different experts. Actual Turkish version is Kons atmak, coming from conversation. And in an agentic AI environment, different agent can ask different questions to different specialized agents to find the correct, to reach to correct decision. And if we develop agentic AI systems with many specialized models, and we can we may increase the success of AI systems. For example, for dermatology, one agent can focus on cancer, another on hair, and a moderator agent can then compare their opinions and create a more balanced final decision. And this could be helpful because agreement between agents can increase confidence, and can provide better explainability for clinicians to choose the answer of AI or not. So agentic AI may make medical AI system more structured, explainable, and clinical safer. And also compressing one big LLM into small and specialized agentic language models is mostly better, and we can develop specialized language models and they can be resource efficient. I showed two pathways for implementation in the beginning of the seminar, and my final words are we cannot use cloud-based systems like ChatGPT in a regulated environment, as it's not legal. Actually, clinicians use ChatGPT, but if you would like to develop a commercial medical AI system, we cannot do it. For this purpose, we can focus on local deployable agentic AI system that contains different and various specialized agents, and these agents can run sequentially, that reduce hardware requirements, and all data stays on the local computer and in a private environment and secure and compliant environment. And in the future, I would like to focus on modular multi-agent orchestration for specific disease by fine-tuning dermatoloma on different dermatology subfields such as skin cancer. Our dermatoloma model can behave like a moderator agent, not like a specialized agent. And I would like to focus on synthetic image data generation. Some of you may know of Nano Banana Pro or ChatGPT Image Gen 2. If you ask to generate one synthetic skin image, it sometimes generates terrible images. But if you provide a real skin image and give a pattern, and it can generate perfect synthetic images, especially ChatGPT Image Gen 2. And I would like to develop, I would like to test some test time computational techniques like RAG by combining them with our dermatoloma model. And I would like to do a randomized clinical trial in medical AI in Turkey for the testing of our dermatoloma model. And if you return to the search to product pathway, the key message is that medical AI cannot stop at model training or academic paper. We need to be aware of product sites. For example, we can develop trillion size language model for medical, but we cannot use it. And there are more than 700 FDA approved startups focusing on radiology, but just 3 or 4 of them are successful. To become successful, it must also satisfy clinical validation, privacy requirements, and infrastructure and business scaling. And this is especially important for healthcare systems with limited resource, and it's a highly regulated environment. I would like to quickly explain my business experience in my startup. Actually, I mentioned 2 startups, but my other startup, Coach Motion, which focused on sports technologies, unfortunately failed. And our current digital health startup, Corporal Health, here we develop agentic AI systems for real clinical environments for chronic disease management, such as diabetes, heart disease, and obesity. We have more than 50K users and 3K healthcare professionals. And we are also working with global pharma companies like Sanofi, Novo Nordisk, and local companies like Abdurrahim or Turkey Sigorta. We are the digital health partner of Novo Nordisk for Ozempic in Turkey. Finally, my co-founders published the first randomized digital health clinical trial paper in Turkey. In this study, they achieved an 8% reduction in ASCVD risk score, indicating a lower estimated risk of cardiovascular disease. Until now, we have received 2 TÜBİTAK grants. We also passed the first round of the ERC program 3 years ago, but we later pivoted away from the topic actually we had been working on at that time. These are our grant experience, and thank you very much for listening.